Crash landing. Navigator Eliza Chen's hands flew across the shuttle's control panel as warning lights flashed a violent crimson throughout the cabin. The small survey vessel shuddered around her, systems failing one by one as she plummeted through the atmosphere of Kepler 438c. Mayday, Mayday. This is Explorer Shuttle Delta 9. We are experiencing catastrophic system failure during atmospheric entry. Coordinates. She glanced at the flickering navigation display. Unknown. Repeat, coordinates unknown. Only static answered her call. The dense ionosphere of this unexplored world was blocking all communications with the research vessel orbiting somewhere above. The shuttle groaned as she wrestled with the manual controls, trying to establish some semblance of stability in their descent. "Come on, baby, hold together," she muttered, her knuckles white against the controls. Eliza had been mapping the northern continent of this supposedly uninhabited world when the anomaly appeared. A storm unlike anything their sensors had detected during the initial planetary survey. It materialized out of nowhere, a swirling mass of electromagnetic energy that engulfed her shuttle before she could plot an escape vector. Now she was paying the price for her curiosity, plunging through the atmosphere in what amounted to little more than a high-tech coffin. The altimeter spun wildly as the ground rushed up to meet her. Eliza braced herself, closing her eyes as the shuttle clipped the canopy of towering alien trees. Metal screamed against wood as the vessel carved a path through the forest before slamming into the loamy soil. The impact threw her against her restraints, and darkness claimed her consciousness. When Eliza awoke, sunlight filtered through the cracked viewport of her shuttle. Her head throbbed with each heartbeat, and a warm trickle of blood had dried on her temple. Unclasping her safety harness, she assessed her situation with the methodical precision that had earned her a spot on this expedition. The shuttle was a wreck. The communication array had been completely sheared off during the crash, and the emergency beacon was offline. The survival kit was intact, however, containing a week's worth of rations, a water purifier, and basic medical supplies. She patched up her head wound and gathered what she could carry. 6 days, she said to herself, voice hoarse. The mission protocol gives them 6 days before they send a rescue team. 6 days alone on an alien world. 6 days to survive. Pushing open the shuttle's hatch, Eliza stepped into a world of vibrant color. The forest around her was unlike anything she had ever seen on Earth, or the handful of colonies humanity had established among the stars. Massive trees with indigo trunks stretched skyward, their canopies shimmering with leaves that shifted from emerald to azure as they caught the light. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, sweet, musky, alive. Eliza activated her wrist computer, but the electromagnetic interference that had brought down her shuttle continued to play havoc with her electronics. The device flickered to life just long enough to confirm what she already suspected. She was in uncharted territory, far from her intended survey zone. First things first, she muttered, setting up a small perimeter around the crash site. Water, shelter, signal. As the alien sun began its descent toward the horizon, Eliza finished constructing the simple lean-to against a fallen tree. She had located a stream not far from the crash site, and her water purifier confirmed it was safe to drink. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, to process the reality of her situation. That's when she heard it, a sound like no animal she had ever encountered. A low, rumbling purr that sent vibrations through the ground beneath her feet. Eliza froze, her hand moving silently to the standard-issue laser cutter at her hip. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but it could serve as one if necessary. Slowly, she turned toward the source of the sound. They emerged from the undergrowth like living shadows, tall and graceful. Humanoid in form, but clearly alien, their bodies covered in short, sleek fur that ranged from deep russet to golden amber. Their eyes were large and reflective, with vertical pupils that contracted as they studied her. Most striking of all were their ears, triangular and alert atop their heads, and the long, sinuous tails that swayed behind them as they moved. Eliza counted 7 of them, each carrying implements that could only be weapons, spears tipped with crystalline points that caught the fading light. One stood at the fore, taller than the rest, with fur the color of polished mahogany and intricate patterns shaved into the fur along powerful arms. This one wore an elaborate collar of metallic beads and iridescent stones. "Hello," Eliza said, keeping her voice steady as she raised her empty hands. "I mean no harm." The leader tilted their head, a curiously feline gesture, and stepped forward. Eliza remained still, her explorer training kicking in. First contact protocol: remain non-threatening. Establish communication if possible. Respect cultural boundaries. The alien's face was a fascinating blend of human and feline features, with a slightly flattened nose and pronounced canines visible when they spoke in a language of growls, clicks, and purrs that her translator couldn't process. The leader reached out a clawed hand, and Eliza fought the instinct to step back. Instead, she allowed the alien to touch her face, feeling the roughness of their paw pads against her skin. What happened next caught her completely off guard. The alien's tongue, rough like a cat's but broader, darted out and licked the dried blood from her temple. Eliza froze, unsure if this was aggression, curiosity, or something else entirely. The alien's eyes widened, pupils dilating fully until they were almost completely black. A sound like 1,000 whispers filled the clearing as the aliens began to speak all at once. The leader stepped back, dropping to one knee before Eliza. One by one, the others followed suit until all 7 were kneeling, their weapons laid on the ground. Okay, Eliza said, bewildered. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The leader spoke again, this time placing a hand over their heart before pointing to the sky, then to Eliza. The message was clear even without a translator. "You came from the stars." "Yes," Eliza said, mimicking the gesture. "I'm from elsewhere." The leader stood, taking Eliza's hand with surprising gentleness. They pointed to themselves and spoke a word that sounded like Nara. Then they pointed to Eliza and waited expectantly. "Eliza," she responded, tapping her own chest. "My name is Eliza." Nara's approximation of her name came out as something closer to Elja, but it was close enough. The alien smiled, a very human expression on their exotic face, revealing those sharp canines once more. With a series of gestures that Eliza interpreted as an invitation, Nara led her away from the crash site. The others formed a protective circle around them, all signs of aggression gone. Eliza hesitated only briefly before following, bringing her survival pack. The shuttle was damaged beyond her ability to repair, and these beings might be her best chance at survival until rescue arrived. The forest deepened around them as they walked, the indigo trunks growing more massive, the undergrowth thicker. Bioluminescent fungi cast a blue-green glow over their path as the dual moons of Kepler 438 began to rise. Eliza's scientific mind raced, cataloging everything she saw. This was the kind of discovery that defined careers, that changed humanity's understanding of life in the universe. After nearly an hour of walking, the forest opened into a vast clearing. Eliza gasped at what she saw. A settlement built into the living trees themselves. Dwellings of wood, fiber, and stone climbed up the trunks, connected by bridges of woven vines. Fires burned in stone pits, and hundreds of the feline aliens moved about their business in the gathering dusk. All activity ceased as Nara led Eliza into the village. The silence was deafening as countless reflective eyes turned to study her. Then Nara let out a thunderous roar that echoed through the clearing. "Skywalker." The word, or something like it, was repeated by the gathered crowd, who began to bow as Eliza passed. She was led to the center of the village, where a massive tree stump had been carved into a dais. Upon it sat an ancient-looking alien, their fur silver with age, adorned with even more elaborate jewelry than Nara. This elder studied Eliza with milky eyes that suggested partial blindness, yet there was nothing weak about their posture. Nara knelt before the elder and spoke rapidly in their language, occasionally gesturing to Eliza and the sky. The elder listened intently, then beckoned Eliza forward. "I hope this is just a friendly welcome ceremony," Eliza murmured to herself as she stepped onto the dais. The elder took her hand in gnarled fingers and turned it palm up. With one claw, they made a small cut across her palm. Eliza winced but didn't pull away. The elder leaned forward and tasted her blood, just as Nera had tasted the blood from her temple. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The elder's eyes cleared, shifting from milky white to a brilliant amber. They stood straighter, as if years had fallen away, and spoke a single word that silenced the entire gathering. The elder placed both hands on Eliza's shoulders and turned her to face the tribe. A mark was drawn on her forehead with what looked like luminescent pollen, and the elder spoke in a voice that carried across the clearing. Though Eliza couldn't understand the words, the reverence in the tone was unmistakable. As the final words were spoken, the entire tribe prostrated themselves before her. Only Nera remained standing, a fierce pride evident in their posture. "Skywalker," Nera said, the word clearly an attempt at human speech. Eliza looked around at the bowed aliens, at the magnificent forest village, at the alien moons rising above. In that moment, she understood that her mission had changed. She wasn't just a navigator waiting for rescue anymore. Something about her, something in her blood, had triggered a cultural response of profound significance to these people. "I think," she said softly, "that I'm going to need more than 6 days to figure this out." Nera's ears twitched, not understanding her words but recognizing the acceptance in her tone. The alien placed a hand over Eliza's heart, then over their own, a gesture of connection. As the tribe rose and began what could only be described as a celebration, with music and dance unlike anything human ears had heard before, Eliza made a decision. She would learn their language, understand their customs, and discover why the taste of her blood had marked her as something special to these people. And when rescue came, if rescue came, she would have a story to tell that would change humanity's understanding of their place in the cosmos. But first, she needed to learn why they called her Skywalker, and what exactly that meant for her future on this alien world. The trials begin. 3 days had passed since Eliza's arrival in the village of the Vashkai, as she had learned to call them. 3 days of observation, of hesitant communication, of slowly piecing together fragments of their language. Her translator was making progress, building a rudimentary lexicon that allowed for basic exchanges, but the cultural context remained elusive. "Fire. Good," she said carefully, sitting cross-legged beside one of the communal hearths. A group of Vashkai cubs, there was no better word for the children, watched her with wide, curious eyes. Water. Clean. One of the bolder cubs, a female with unusually spotted fur, reached out to touch Eliza's hair, fascinated by its texture. Eliza smiled, allowing the contact. These interactions were precious data points, each one helping her understand her hosts better. "Skywalker," the cub said, using the title everyone in the village had adopted for her. "Stars. Home." Eliza nodded, pointing upward. "Yes, my home is far away among the stars." The cub's expression was solemn. "Prophecies say, Skywalker come. Skywalker, say Vashkai." Before Eliza could ask what she meant, a shadow fell across them. Nara stood there, an imposing figure in ceremonial garb, a harness of woven leather adorned with polished stones and metal components that Eliza now recognized as salvage technology from some unknown source. "Elja," Nara said, the closest approximation of her name the Vashkai could manage. "Come. Time." Eliza rose, bidding farewell to the cubs with a gesture she'd learned was respectful, a light touch to her own forehead, then extended toward them. They mimicked it, purring with delight at being acknowledged by the strange visitor from the stars. She followed Nera through the village, noting how the other Vashkai stopped their work to bow slightly as she passed. The reverence was unsettling. In her 3 days here, She gathered that the title Skywalker held deep religious significance, but the details remained frustratingly out of reach. "Nara," she said as they walked, "why do they call me Skywalker? What does it mean?" Nara's tail swished, a gesture Eliza had learned indicated thoughtfulness. "Old stories tell of one who walks between worlds. Starblood. When Elder Tashik tasted your blood, the ancestors spoke through her. You are marked by starlight." "Marked by starlight," Eliza repeated, touching the spot on her forehead where Elder Tashak had drawn the luminescent symbol during her arrival ceremony. Though washed away now, she sometimes felt a phantom warmth there. "And what does a Skywalker do?" Nara led her toward the massive tree at the center of the village, its trunk wider than 10 humans standing shoulder to shoulder. "Skywalker proves worth 3 trials. Then Skywalker leads Vashkai to New Age." "Trials?" Eliza asked, a note of concern entering her voice. "What kind of trials?" They had reached the base of the great tree, where an opening had been carved into the living wood. Inside, a spiral staircase wound upward into the heart of the trunk. Nara gestured for her to ascend. "First, you must understand," Nara said simply. The staircase led to a chamber hollowed out within the tree itself, lit by the same bioluminescent fungi that illuminated the forest paths. Elder Tashak waited there, seated on a cushion of woven fibers, surrounded by what appeared to be artifacts, objects of metal, stone, and materials Eliza couldn't identify. "Skywalker," the elder greeted her, voice clearer than it had been during their first meeting. "Sit. Learn." Eliza settled across from the elder, folding her legs beneath her. Nara took a position by the entrance, standing guard. "I have many questions," Eliza began. "And I have stories," Tashik replied, her translator now capable of rendering the elder's speech with reasonable accuracy. "Stories of the before time, when the Vashkai were not as you see us now, when we came from the same stars that birthed you." Eliza leaned forward, her scientific curiosity piqued. "You're saying the Vashkai aren't native to this planet? Ancestors came in great skyship," Tashik confirmed, reaching for one of the artifacts. A fragment of what looked like a control panel, its surface etched with symbols Eliza recognized with a shock as a variant of standard galactic script. "Ship broke. Ancestors stayed, changed by the world song over many generations." Eliza's mind raced with implications. If the Vashkai were descendants of an ancient spacefaring civilization, possibly even related to humans on some distant ancestral level, it could explain their bipedal form, their capacity for complex language, and perhaps even why her blood had triggered such a powerful response. "How long ago?" she asked. "Time." Tashek's ears flattened. "Difficult. Many generations. The world song has turned many times." Eliza nodded, understanding the challenge of translating time scales across cultures. "And this prophecy about the Skywalker, when did that begin?" Tashak's paw reached out to touch Eliza's wrist, claws retracted in a gesture of trust. "When ancestors knew they would never leave, when they saw their children changing, they left message in the blood. Someday one would come from stars, one with the old blood, the pure blood. This one would guide Vashkai when the stars threatened again." A chill ran down Eliza's spine. "Threatened? How?" Tashik rose slowly, moving to a covered alcove in the chamber wall. She pulled aside a hanging woven from fiber and revealed a crude but effective rendering of a star system. Kepler 438. In the center, the star itself, with its orbiting planets represented by spheres of various materials. Eliza recognized the third planet -438 key by its distinctive jewel moons. "World song speaks," Tashik said gravely. "Others come, not like you. They hunger for the Heartstone." She pointed to glittering deposits embedded in the representation of 438C. Eliza's breath caught. Crystalline formations, high energy potential. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Mining corporations, They're coming for resource extraction. Nara stepped forward, voice low and urgent. 2 sleeps ago, while you healed, more skyships came. Small, like yours. They did not crash. They search. Survey teams, Eliza whispered. Advance parties for mining operations. She turned back to Tashak. What do the Vashkai expect me to do about this? Complete trials, Tashak said simply. Prove worth. Connect to World Song. Lead Vashkai. Eliza stood, pacing the chamber. I'm a navigator, not a diplomat or a warrior. My own people will be looking for me, but they aren't coming to help with this situation. They don't even know these corporations are here. Blood speaks, Tashak insisted. Skywalker's path is clear. Eliza paused, looking between the elder and Nara. The weight of their expectations settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. Tell me about these trials. Nara stepped forward, taking a ceremonial knife from a sheath at her side. First trial. Retrieve the crystal tear from the Cave of Echoes. Prove courage. Second trial. Tashak continued. Survive the Night of Spirits alone in the sacred hunting grounds. Prove wisdom. Third trial. Nara finished. Commune with the heart of the world. Prove connection. Eliza took a deep breath, considering her options. She could refuse, insist on returning to her crash site to await rescue. But something about the earnestness in Tashak's aged eyes, the fierce hope in Nara's posture, gave her pause. These people, these distant cousins of humanity, were facing an existential threat, and somehow her arrival had given them hope. When do we start? She asked finally. Nara's ears perked up, and a rumbling purr of approval emanated from her chest. Now, the sun reaches height. Best time for Cave of Echoes. As they descended the spiral staircase, Eliza's wrist computer chimed, the first clear signal she'd received since the crash. A message from the research vessel, automated and brief. Search parties deployed. Maintain position if able. Estimated retrieval. 3 days. 3 days. The same amount of time she had already spent with the Vashkai. Enough time to complete these trials, perhaps. Enough time to learn more about this impending threat and possibly help these people who had welcomed her as a savior. Let's go, she said to Nara, a new determination in her voice. The Cave of Echoes lay at the far end of the valley, where the forest gave way to rocky outcroppings. As they traveled, Nara explained more about the crystal tear they sought. Heartstone fragment, she said. Pure, powerful, lies deep in cave where world song is strong. And what makes it dangerous to retrieve? Eliza asked, knowing that any trial worthy of the name would involve risk. Cave guards its treasures, Nara replied cryptically. Echoes of past, shadows of might be. They reached the cave entrance by midday, a jagged opening in the rock face, surrounded by the same luminescent fungi that lit the Vashkai village. The air emerging from the cave was cool and carried a faint musical note, like distant wind chimes. You go alone, Nara said, stepping back. Take this. She handed Eliza a small metal device, similar to a compass, but with symbols etched around its edge. We'll guide to Heartstone. Any advice? Eliza asked, checking her equipment, her wrist computer, the laser cutter, and a light source. Trust blood, Nara said simply. Blood knows the way. With those cryptic words ringing in her ears, Eliza entered the cave. The passage descended steeply, the walls gradually transitioning from rough stone to a smoother surface embedded with veins of crystalline material that glowed faintly in the darkness. The musical note grew stronger as she proceeded, becoming a symphony of tones that seemed to resonate with her very bones. The compass-like device vibrated in her hand, the needle pointing steadily deeper into the earth. Eliza followed its guidance, marveling at the increasing density of crystal formations around her. This was what the mining corporations would come for, a resource of clearly immense potential. The passage opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling so high that her light couldn't reach it. The walls were encrusted with crystals of all sizes, each one humming with energy. At the center of the chamber stood a column of pure crystal, and suspended within it, the crystal tear, a perfect droplet-shaped formation that seemed to capture and amplify the light from Eliza's lamp. "Doesn't seem that difficult," she murmured, stepping toward the column. That's when the echoes began. "Eliza." She froze at the sound of her name, spoken in a voice she recognized, her own. From the shadows stepped a figure, herself, but different. Older, harder, dressed in the uniform of a corporate security officer rather than the Explorer Corps. The doppelganger's eyes were cold, calculating. "What are you doing here, playing savior to a bunch of primitives?" her double asked, circling her slowly. "These resources could advance human civilization by decades. Think of the energy crisis on Earth, the colonies struggling to survive, all solved by what lies beneath this world." "You're not real," Eliza said firmly, continuing toward the crystal column. Another echo emerged from the darkness. This time, a Vashkei she didn't recognize, though something in the set of the ears reminded her of Nera. "You will fail us," the Vashkei echo said, voice dripping with disappointment. "The corporations will come. They will take the Heartstone. They will destroy the world song. And you, Skywalker, will watch it happen." Eliza's steps faltered, but she pressed on, understanding now what Nera had meant by echoes of past, shadows of might be. The cave was somehow manifesting her fears, her potential futures. More echoes appeared, corporate executives offering her wealth beyond imagining for her cooperation. Vashkei lying dead from conflict over the crystals, her own research team turning against her when she tried to protect the indigenous population. Each step toward the crystal became harder, as if the air itself was thickening around her. The echoes pressed closer, their voices overlapping, their accusations and temptations merging into a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm her senses. When she finally reached the crystal column, Eliza was breathing hard, sweat beading on her forehead. The crystal tear hung just out of reach, suspended in the heart of the column as if frozen in time. "How am I supposed to retrieve it?" she wondered aloud. As if in answer, the cut on her palm, the one Elder Tashak had made during the ceremony, began to throb. On instinct, Eliza pressed her wounded hand against the column. The crystal responded immediately, humming at a frequency that made her teeth ache. The material around the tear began to shift, creating an opening just large enough for her to reach through. Eliza grasped the tear, surprised by its warmth, and pulled it free. The moment the tear left the column, the echoes vanished, and the chamber fell silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the crystal tear in her hand, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The return journey through the cave was uneventful, as if the place had expended its energy in challenging her. When she emerged into the daylight, Nera was waiting, exactly where Eliza had left her. "You have it," Nera said, eyes fixed on the crystal tear in Eliza's hand. First trial complete. Eliza's mind was still reeling from the visions in the cave. Those echoes, they showed me possibilities. The corporations, the conflict. Is that what you fear will happen? Nera's ears flattened against her head. World song speaks truth. What you saw is what may come. Then we need to prepare, Eliza said, the navigator giving way to something else. A protector, a leader. The second trial, the Night of Spirits. When does it begin? Nera pointed to the horizon, where the first of Kepler 438 K's moons was rising. When both sisters climb sky, you will enter sacred hunting grounds. Until sun returns, you will face spirits of ancestors. They will test wisdom. As they traveled back toward the village, the crystal tear warm against Eliza's skin, where she had tucked it into a pouch at her belt, she considered what she had learned. The Vashkei were the descendants of space travelers, transformed over generations by their new home. Their blood, perhaps carrying markers of their original genetic heritage, had recognized something in hers, triggering the prophecy of the Skywalker. And now, corporations from Earth or its colonies were coming to exploit this world's resources, just as humans had done to countless planets before. The difference this time was that Eliza was here, caught between worlds, with the knowledge and perhaps the power to change the outcome. As they reached the outskirts of the village, Eliza saw a group of Vashkai warriors returning from patrol. Their expressions were grim, their weapons ready. One broke from the group to approach Nara, speaking urgently in their native tongue. Eliza's translator caught fragments. Sky people, machines, digging. Nara turned to Eliza, her eyes reflecting the dying light of the sun. Time grows short. You must complete trials quickly. Others come with fire and hunger. Eliza nodded, clutching the crystal tear. Then let's not waste any time. As night fell over the village, preparations for the second trial began. Eliza would need all her courage and wisdom to face what lay ahead in the sacred hunting grounds, and beyond that, the greater challenge of saving the Vashkai from the encroaching human tide. Divided loyalties. The sacred hunting grounds stretched before Eliza, a vast expanse of twisted trees and shadow-filled hollows. The twin moons of Kepler 438 hung overhead, casting an eerie silver-blue light that transformed the landscape into something otherworldly. Behind her, the Vashkai village was a distant glow among the trees, and ahead lay her second trial, the Night of Spirits. You carry only what is within, Nara had told her as they prepared, removing Eliza's wrist computer, her laser cutter, even the pouch containing the crystal tear she had retrieved from the Cave of Echoes. Ancestors test spirit, not tools. Now, dressed in a simple garment woven from plant fibers dyed with natural pigments, Eliza stepped into the hunting grounds alone. The only item she had been permitted to keep was a small ceremonial knife, a token gesture, she suspected, as the dangers she would face tonight wouldn't be physical, at least not in the conventional sense. She had scarcely walked 100 paces when the air around her began to shimmer, like heat rising from sun-baked earth. The night sounds of the forest, the chirping of insect-like creatures, the distant calls of aerial predators, fell away, replaced by an expectant silence. Navigator Eliza Chen. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonant and ancient. Eliza turned slowly, searching for its source, and found herself face to face with a being that defied easy description. It resembled a Vashkai in basic form, but its fur was composed of constellations, stars shifting and swirling across its body. Its eyes were twin nebulae, ancient and knowing. I am Kirishana, the apparition said. First, to walk the world path. You seek wisdom. Eliza steadied herself, remembering Nara's warning that the spirits would test her in ways she couldn't anticipate. I seek to understand, she replied carefully, to help the Vashkai face what's coming. The star-furred being circled her, leaving a trail of cosmic dust in its wake. Why? They are not your people. Your blood may echo theirs, but your loyalty lies with the corporation that sent you. I'm not with any corporation, Eliza corrected. I'm with the Interstellar Research Consortium, a scientific body. We explore, we learn, we document. We don't exploit. Yet you open the path, Kirishana countered. You map the worlds, catalog the resources, then return to your kind with knowledge that others use to raid and ravage. Do you deny this? Eliza wanted to argue, but the accusation struck too close to truth. How many worlds had she surveyed, only to find them colonized or mined within decades? The consortium's mission was pure, but the consequences of their discoveries often weren't. I can't change what others do with knowledge, she said finally, but I can try to change what happens here. Kirishana's star eyes flared, then faced the first question. What is the value of a world? The simplicity of the question belied its complexity. Eliza considered her answer carefully. To my people, worlds have many values: scientific, economic, strategic. But I think you're asking what value I place on this world, on the Vashkai's home. The spirit nodded, cosmic dust swirling. And Its value is in its existence, Eliza said, finding the words as she spoke them. In the life it supports, the knowledge it holds, the future it represents, not just as a resource to be extracted, but as a place of wonder to be preserved. Kirishana's form shifted, stars realigning into a pattern that somehow conveyed approval, a beginning of wisdom. Now, walk. The spirit vanished, leaving Eliza alone once more in the moonlit forest. She continued forward, her path illuminated by bioluminescent fungi that seemed to light up just before her feet touched the ground, as if the forest itself was guiding her. She had walked for perhaps an hour when she emerged into a clearing dominated by a massive stone formation, not natural, but clearly ancient, with carvings that reminded her of the symbols on the artifacts in Elder Tashik's chamber. At the center of the clearing stood another spirit, this one formed not of stars, but of living crystal, like the formations in the Cave of Echoes. "I am Lethnerai," the crystal being said, voice like chimes in the wind. "Second to hear the world song. You seek connection." "I do," Eliza confirmed, approaching the crystal spirit cautiously. Then faced the second question: what binds people together? Eliza thought of Earth, of its nations and colonies, of the complex web of treaties and trade agreements that held human civilization together. She thought of the Vashkai, bound by blood and shared history, and she thought of her own position, caught between these two worlds. "Shared purpose," she answered, "common needs and dreams, the understanding that we are stronger together than apart." "And what of blood?" Lethnerai asked. "The Vashkai revere you because your blood speaks to theirs. Is this connection real or illusion?" Eliza had been pondering this question since the moment Elder Tashak had tasted her blood. "I believe it's real," she said. "Not mystical, perhaps, but there is something in my genetic makeup that resonates with theirs. A shared ancestry, distant but detectable. Evidence of a common origin. Science and spirit, the crystal being observed. Two paths to the same truth. But is shared blood enough to create true connection?" "No," Eliza said firmly. "Blood may be a starting point, but true connection comes from choice. The choice to understand, to respect, to protect. I may share some genetic heritage with the Vashkai, but my connection to them will be defined by my actions, not my ancestry." The crystal spirit shimmered, facets catching the moonlight. "Connection begins in blood but lives in heart. Remember this when divisions emerge." Before Eliza could ask what divisions the spirit foresaw, Lethnerai dissolved into a shower of crystalline dust that settled on the ground, forming a path that led away from the clearing and deeper into the hunting grounds. Following this new path, Eliza became aware of subtle changes in the forest around her. The vegetation grew more sparse, the trees more twisted. The ground beneath her feet transitioned from soft soil to hard-packed earth, inscribed with more of the ancient symbols. She had the distinct impression that she was walking not just across physical space, but through time itself, deeper into the history of this world and its people. The path ended at the edge of a precipice overlooking a vast valley. In the center of the valley stood the unmistakable remnants of a spacecraft, not human in design, ancient beyond reckoning, half buried in the earth and overgrown with vegetation. The original vessel that had brought the Vashkai's ancestors to this world. Standing at the edge of the precipice was the third spirit, formed from living flame that burned without consuming. Its features,